Welcome back to the Pulse. Now, if you've followed recent events in Ghana, you would realize that the voices to fix the country are indeed getting louder. Well, their demand for the country to be fixed is not ending now because a new group which subscribes to the objectives is up pushing for the Fix the Country agenda to be moved forward. The National Interest Movement, a non-partisan civil society organization which acts as a think tank with CSOs, say they're united in the campaign to fix the country, and they believe that begins with changes to the Constitution of Ghana. They say a comprehensively reformed constitution will help to curb parochial pursuits that distorts the functioning of our democracy to suit partisan patronage. A representative will join us shortly, but let me reveal to you the personalities behind the National Interest Movement. Dr. Abu Sakara Foster, he is the founder. Professor Raymunda Tuguba is chairman, Petition Committee. Professor Ransford Jampo is vice chair, Petition Committee. Dr. Charles Abugri is chairman, Economic Development Committee. And Dr. Susan Edua-Mankwa is executive director. A very solid and credible team there. Dr. Abu Sakara is joining us via Zoom to help us understand what they really want change about the 1992 Constitution. But even before that, Dr. Abu Sakara, I'm grateful for your time. What really has motivated this move?
The National Interest Movement started after the 2012 election. So we've been registered for almost 5 years. During that 5 years, we've asked ourselves a very pertinent question relating to the fact that we want to see a change in the duopoly, and we want to see a change in the country. And the question we asked ourselves are, what is keeping our country from becoming what it can be compared to its contemporaries that we always ask ourselves about and compare ourselves to? So we have determined that the key things that are holding us back are really the roadblocks in our constitution that have stopped us from operating like a cohesive, focused community of people in communities, nation, up to the national level, so that we can have a direct impact on our development. And by this, we mean that the issues relating to the transition from essentially a military government to a civilian government, in which we embedded in the Constitution certain things that protected certain people and certain ways of doing things. So we want to see a reduction in power concentrated at the center. And by that, we mean a reduction in the amount of appointments that the president alone makes, in his influence over independent bodies, and also in the capacity of the independent bodies to operate independently. We want to see a separation between the legislative and the executive, and an empowerment of the judiciary. Those are things that we can only do if we make some constitutional changes, and really drastic ones. On top of that, we want to make those changes that speak to the tension that we have at elections. Why do we have these tensions? Because there's a perception that somebody's electoral commissioner is going to be the referee. Why can't we have a system in which a second chamber, which we create to appoint these independent bodies, appoints that independent person, and we take some levy from our income to directly fund those independent organizations, so the executive cannot control them through the budget. That way, then both sides and everybody else can have confidence that they can operate independently. We don't want a situation where you elect a director of public prosecution and, almost 9-10 months later, before his office is funded. Those things shouldn't happen.
Dr. Sakara, we understand that you've already set this process in motion by petitioning the Speaker of Parliament to cause an amendment of the Constitution. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we have a comprehensive table of reforms that deal with key areas. One has to do with long-term national development planning and its impact on our country's progress. The other has to do with the powers of the executive and its influence on other arms of government. And then the other has to do with the independent bodies And yet still, we're looking at committing certain amount of our revenue on investment in productive areas of the economy. We cannot be spending all our revenue on the consumption parts of the economy. That's not how we manage our households. So we say we need to guard a certain amount of our revenue that will be invested in production areas, agriculture, light industry, manufacturing, those kind of things, so that at least we're growing where we can harvest instead of always borrowing the money to spend it on those services and then we go back and borrow some more. That's not sustainable. So we want to limit the scope in which decision making is made to focus on directions that will keep us growing, directions that will limit excesses, and directions that will ensure greater transparency and accountability. Of course, all of these have to do with attitude changes in our society from top to bottom. We keep pointing fingers at the politicians, but politicians come from where? They come from our homes and they relate to us in the context of how we are in a community. So we have to start changing that. And some of these things is difficult to change it in the generation which is already here and about to go. So you start with the younger generation. So in about 20 years, we will have the people with the right mindset. And that's where we're thinking of changes, deep changes in our curriculum to make it very Afrocentric to our own community. And in addition to that, we want to put in compulsory military training from 16 to 25 years old, 2 years each for everybody, because that will also ensure we get the level of discipline in the society that we need, and we can build patriotism. And those who do not want to go on to tertiary education, we can use the Army Corps of Engineers right there to start artisanal training and linking up with civilians so that they can have guild training and certification, and they come out at a professional standard. These are things that we can do. We don't really need to reinvent the wheel.
What are the specific provisions in the Constitution 1992 that you want amended?
Well, I think the first thing is that in the table of reforms, we've organized it so that we have the problem, the proposed solution, the articles that it affects, and how those articles are to be changed. Of course, this is a document prepared by legal people, and we have put it on the website. We've downloaded it, and everybody will have access to see. There are many, they're not few. And that is why we use the word a comprehensive reform, because if you tweakle with only a little part of it and leave the rest, then you will still have a lopsided, constitution that does not work as we want it to work. So we want it to be adjusted in its totality. Of course, there are some that have higher priority than others, and those have to do with changes that would have a pervasive impact. In other words, it will be a very big impact throughout the system. And those have to do with the executive and the independence of independent bodies and the ability to operate independently. And in addition to that, the checks and balances in the system to make sure that there's greater accountability and confidence in the integrity of elections. Those are important, but there's other important things which are central, like the national development planning. We want that to be looked at in a different way, where the long-term national development plan is done by all of us together to meet our aspirations and our visions as a nation. Then in segments of 6 years, each political grouping can look at the targets within that and download from that into their manifesto so that they can show us how they can better deliver that particular segment of development for that 6-year period and budget for it. And then we can have confidence in their plan or not. It is not a free-for-all where, because there's not a long-term national development plan, you just go to some standard priority list of 12 or so, download what you want and create your own manifesto. And the net result is that with each administration, you're swinging from one side to the other. People who swing from one side to the other of the road cannot progress as fast as the people who move forward in a straight line. And that long-term development plan will narrow our swinging about left to right, so we move forward as a nation, and we can be compared out then to our other compatriots who have left us behind now, the Malaysias, the Koreas, etc. The key thing for those people has been their continuity and also their consistency, and also ensuring that there's a long-term vision. These are the things that mark them out different to our development.
For Fix the Country campaign, for instance, the conveners and the members have used social media and protests to drum home their demand. What's going to be your modus operandi to ensure you get what you're looking for?
Yes. Our modus operandi is at 3 levels. The first is that intellectually, we've brought a lot of people together to sit down, compile this document, and send it to the Speaker of Parliament, where it belongs, rightly. We've not sent it through the executive because it will be seen as taking sides. We've sent it to the Speaker of Parliament. He can call both sides and tell them, look, we have these reforms. Which ones are you interested in? Which ones do you want to champion? And then we will do it together. That's what we hoped as a nation we could do. But we're not relying only on that, because some of those reforms will affect they themselves in Parliament. And you cannot ask people who are playing a game of football to be their own referees. So we will then be soliciting the support of ordinary Ghanaians by going constituency to constituency and collecting 200 signatures per constituency. At that stage, we will submit those signatures to their local MP with an endorsement by the community of the reforms that we have tabled, for him to table those in Parliament. And eventually, all those things will come back to Accra here. So we're working from the grassroots level, and we have an agenda. We're saying, look, by 2022 ending, we should have a referendum on this constitution. It's not an endless discussion of holding workshops, conferences, radio interviews, etc. If we want to move forward, by the end of 2022, we should have a referendum on this mammoth referendum on this comprehensive reform agenda. Then in 2023, we can put in place quickly those things that relate to the election, the electoral reforms, so that by 2024, we have an electoral commissioner and an electoral commission that both sides can agree is independent and is independently selected by a process that has been put in place and will not change from administration to administration. That is one of the beginnings. Then, of course, we'll have an expansion of the political space, because we're also saying that the political space should allow the formation of coalition governments, so that coalition governments, based on numbers of votes at the presidential level or numbers of constituencies, we will form our own proportional representation mechanism. We don't have to copy anybody else's. We can copy our own. We can bring those coalition governments in 2024 into being, so that the duopoly is not entrenched forever and does not become stagnant. This is another way that we can make progress. So there are many other issues in the reforms that will probably need a longer period to discuss. But I'm just highlighting the key ones, and everybody can go to www.nimghana.org and download the table of reforms, download all the briefings, and also download the signature form, where you can take this form to your constituency and begin explaining what those reforms mean to ordinary people in their everyday lives, and collecting their signatures, and add a letter of endorsement to send to your parliamentary candidate.
I'm grateful for your time, Dr. Abu Sakara. He's a founder for National Interest Movement, and wish you well in this endeavor. He says you can go to www.namegh.com to download the reforms and also join in that movement. Now,